Every night at 12:01, the phone rings. The same number, the same voice. My sister's voice, who's been dead for 6 years. They told me it was grief. They told me it was interference. But when the calls started coming from inside the station, I stopped believing in sleep and started recording everything. What you're about to hear isn't a broadcast. It's a warning. Don't answer after midnight.
Chapter 1. Chapter 1. They said it was just static. The station never really slept. Even at 2 in the morning, when the town outside had folded itself into silence, WZOR still hummed with its own kind of life. The walls breathed with the faint vibration of soundboards and blinking lights. The old transmitter in the next room beat like a pulse, steady and mechanical. Mara Lang had learned to love that heartbeat. It was predictable, unlike the rest of her life. The air smelled of coffee, dust, and electricity. Always electricity. She sat hunched in the glow of the console, headphones half on, microphone live, voice low and steady. "And that was Silver Lines by the Pale Season," she said softly. "You're listening to Nightfall Radio. Stay with me through the dark. You're never really alone." She flicked the fader down. Silence filled the booth. Almost silence. Beneath the hush, a faint hiss lingered. Static. The kind that never truly went away no matter how many times she adjusted the gain. It was comforting once. The soft hiss between songs was a kind of presence. But lately, it had changed. It was no longer random. Mara leaned closer to the monitor, eyes narrowing. The static rose and fell like breathing. She turned a knob. The sound warped, high, then low. Then for half a second, she thought she heard a shape in it, a pattern. "Don't start that again," she muttered. "It's just static." Her voice sounded smaller than she meant it to. She laughed once, hollow and short, and sat back in the chair. The clock above the console clicked at 2:07. A single red light blinked at the far end of the booth, the transmitter connection, the one that had been flickering all week. "It's the tower," she said to no one. "Old equipment, old ghosts." She said it every night. She needed to. Because the first time she'd heard the whisper, 2 weeks ago, it had sounded like her sister. The studio was a coffin of glass and light. Every surface reflected her in fragments, forehead, eyes, mouth, split across black panels. Behind her, the soundproof window looked out into the hallway, but it was just a long corridor of shadow now. The janitor had gone home. The receptionist had gone home. Everyone had gone home. Only Mara remained because she couldn't bear to. She pressed the talk button and said, "Phone lines are open if anyone's still awake out there. Tell me what keeps you up tonight." The console crackled. Then the hum of the room seemed to deepen, like something beneath the floorboards had turned over in its sleep. No calls came, not for several minutes. Then the phone blinked once, line 2. She smiled. "You're on Nightfall Radio. This is Mara. What's your story?" Silence. A soft rush of air came through the receiver. A whisper buried deep under it, something close to words but too thin to catch. Mara leaned closer. "Hello? You're live." The whisper rose, not words, a sound like crying, a woman's voice, faint, breathless. "Is this... hello? Is someone there?" The sound cut. A flat tone replaced it. The line went dead. Mara lowered the phone slowly. Her heartbeat was louder than the static now. She told herself it was feedback, a crossed signal. The tower had been having problems ever since the storm. The air was damp, and the wires outside were probably soaked. She wrote it down anyway in her notebook. 2:14 a.m., line 2, crying voice, possible interference. Then she underlined it twice and whispered again, "It's just static." The static became company. It filled the spaces between songs, between hours, between thoughts. By the fourth night, listeners began calling in. "Hey, Mara, one man said, voice trembling a little. "Weird question. Did you have someone in the studio last night? I swear I heard a woman crying while you were talking about that dream segment." Another caller, a young woman this time. "Your last track cut weird. I heard someone whisper, like right before the ad." Mara replayed the recording. The whisper was there, barely audible, but there. A faint voice under hers trembling between frequencies. She turned the levels up. The hiss broke apart, forming what almost sounded like her name. Mar-A. She shut off the monitor. "Nope, no, that's nothing." But when she leaned back, the words seemed to hang in the air, caught in the soundproof foam, echoing just out of range. By the end of the week, Mara had stopped sleeping at home. Her apartment felt too empty now, the bed too wide. The station was better, lit, constant, mechanical. There was a couch in the break room and a vending machine that hummed like a lullaby. On Friday, she arrived early, long before midnight, to prep the night's broadcast. A technician named Holt was crouched by the panel, soldering a connection. He was older, one of those quiet men who could fix anything, but only if you didn't hover. "Hey, Holt," Mara said. "That thing been acting up again?" He grunted. "Whole line's corroded. Should replace it, but management says it's not in the budget." "Figures," she said. He glanced up at her. "You been getting interference?" Mara hesitated. "Just static." He nodded, wiped his hands. "Static's never just static. It's always coming from somewhere." She forced a laugh. "That's comforting." He unplugged his tools and started packing up. "You'd be surprised what airwaves can hold. Old signals don't die easy. They bounce, sometimes for years." She frowned. "You mean like echoes?" He shrugged. "More like memories. Places remember, wires remember." Then he was gone. Mara stood in the booth long after he left, staring at the cables running across the floor. She could almost feel them breathing. That night's show began like the others. Soft intro music, her calm voice, the ritual rhythm that made her feel human. But midway through the hour, the static returned, stronger, clearer. It started beneath the music, then bled through her mic, then began to form a rhythm, 3 short bursts, too long, a pattern. She turned the dial, the pattern changed. She turned it again, the pattern followed. Her throat tightened. She whispered to the empty room, "It's just static." The pattern stopped. Then, like a voice breaking through water, it whispered back, "No, it isn't." Mara froze. Her eyes darted to the board, to the cables, to the hallway beyond the glass. Nothing. The sound faded. Silence again. Her hands trembled as she turned the dial to 0. Every muscle screamed to leave, to walk out the door and never come back. But she stayed. Because fear, she knew, was only proof that you were still listening. The clock hit 2:59. She leaned into the mic, voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes," she said, "you hear things in the quiet you weren't meant to. Maybe it's just the night playing tricks. Maybe it's something else. Either way, don't listen too close." She cued the next track. Static filled the space between. Then, beneath it, soft, certain, impossible, came a voice that said, "Mara, please pick up." The phone light blinked red. She stared at it. Her breath hitched. The clock ticked once, twice. The light went out. She sat alone, surrounded by the low hum of machines and the faint whisper of the air vents. She said, "It's just static," whispered again, though the words no longer felt like hers. The transmitter buzzed once more, long and low, like a breath drawn in the dark. Somewhere in the wires, something was listening.
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2. The first call came at 12:01. The phone rang once, then again. It was a low, deliberate sound, the kind that doesn't just wake you, it listens to see if you'll answer. Mara froze in her chair. The red digits on the studio clock blinked 12:01 a.m. The lights were low, just the hum of the old mixer bathing the booth in amber. She wasn't supposed to have any calls. The night segment wasn't even live. Her breath fogged slightly against the microphone's mesh. The phone kept ringing. Unknown. No number, no location. Just that single word pulsing like a heartbeat on the caller ID. She let it ring 7 times before she reached for the receiver, not because she wanted to, but because silence felt worse. WQRL, Midnight Lines, you're on the air. Static answered first, a long, dragging hiss like someone inhaling through the mouthpiece. Then, softly, beneath the distortion, came a melody. A child's song. Not any song. That song. Her fingers tightened around the phone until her knuckles whitened. It was the same lullaby her sister used to sing, the one with the falling notes at the end, the one she hadn't heard since the accident 10 years ago. Who is this? No answer. Only the sound of someone breathing between the verses, a slow exhale that matched her own rhythm too closely. She said her sister's name before she realized she'd spoken it. Anna? The lullaby stopped. The static cracked once, loud enough to sting her ear, then a whisper, faint and warped. You shouldn't have answered. The line went dead. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Mara leaned back in the chair, staring at the phone like it was still breathing. She waited for the rational explanation to arrive. Prank, feedback, misdialed number, sleep deprivation. But each one slid off her mind like oil. The studio was too still. Even the air vents had gone quiet. Then she noticed the clock. It was ticking again. But it wasn't just ticking, it was counting. Each second thudded through the booth with mechanical precision, echoing inside her chest. 12:02, 12:03. Every second sounded heavier, like something unseen was marking the time with her. She stood abruptly, knocking her chair against the wall. It's nothing, she whispered, as if saying it out loud could trap it inside words. It's just static. Just static. The phrase felt safe, familiar. She'd said it before. She reached for the switch to kill the landline feed, but the switch was already down. The phone had never been connected. By 12:10, Mara had convinced herself to start recording again. The listeners, what few there were in Hollow Creek, expected a full show, even at this hour. Her script lay open before her, the ink slightly smeared from her sweating palms. She adjusted the mic. This is WQRL. You're listening to... A click interrupted her. Not the usual static or hum, a single deliberate click, like someone had picked up another receiver. Mara froze mid-sentence. Midnight. The click repeated. Then, faintly, the lullaby began again, but slower now. The notes dragged through static. This time, it wasn't from the phone. It was coming from inside the recording playback. She watched the meters flicker as the ghostly tune layered beneath her own voice. The studio lights dimmed for a heartbeat, just enough to make her reflection vanish from the glass. And for a moment, only a moment, she thought she heard a second voice singing along. Higher, fragile, familiar. Anna. The power surged back. The light steadied. Mara exhaled. Her reflection returned, pale, eyes wide, and behind her, for half a second, the glass caught the shape of another silhouette. A girl, standing just beyond the sound booth door. When she spun around, the doorway was empty. The silence pressed against her ears, again, heavy and wet, like being underwater. Mara closed the mic, turned off the monitors, and stood in the dark. Her thoughts began to splinter, reason wrestling with memory. The accident was real. The burial, the photographs, the flowers at the roadside, all real. She'd told herself the sound of Anna's voice had faded years ago, but tonight, it had come back through her frequency. And she couldn't stop thinking about that whisper. You shouldn't have answered. It had sounded almost worried. Not like a threat, like a warning. At 12:27, the lights flickered again. Mara grabbed her phone and opened the call log. Nothing. No record of the incoming number. No trace of a call at all. Only one entry sat there. Last received. Anna Lang. Date? October 19th, 2015. 10 years ago, the night her sister died. The air turned colder, as if the building itself had inhaled. She looked up. The clock had stopped. The red digits were frozen at 12:01, and the second hand, the one that had been ticking so loudly, was still moving, but backward. The studio smelled faintly of ozone, metal, heat, and dust. Mara's breath clouded as she stared at the clock. Its red digits glowed through the dark like open eyes. 12:01. Still. Only the second hand moved, gliding backward in a smooth, endless loop. Tick, tick, tick. Each sound folded in on itself like an echo trapped in a bottle. She pressed her palm against the face of the clock, half expecting to feel something warm. It was cold, too cold, like the inside of a freezer. Her skin stuck to the glass for an instant before she pulled away. The phone rang again. 3 sharp rings. Then, silence. She didn't move, didn't breathe. When it rang a 4th time, she whispered, "It's just static." But the words came out shaky. She reached for the receiver. "Mara!" The voice was faint, distorted, but the way it shaped her name, soft, lilting, familiar, rooted her to the floor. "Anna?" No reply, only the slow hum of air through the line. And then, very quietly, the sound of dripping water. Plink, plink, plink. Her gaze drifted upward. The ceiling tiles above the sound booth shimmered with faint moisture. She could smell damp plaster, like rain after dust. "There's no leak," she muttered. "No pipes up there." The water sound continued, steady, rhythm matching the backward tick of the clock. Plink, tick, plink, tick. She could hear it behind the voice now, her sister's hum folding around the sound, turning it into something like a heartbeat. "You shouldn't be there," the voice whispered. "They hear through the lines." "Who does?" Mara whispered. But the line cut to static before the answer came. The phone went silent again, but the air didn't. It had changed, thicker somehow, as if the room was underwater. Every hum, every faint hiss from the equipment seemed to pulse at the same rhythm as her own heartbeat. Then, the radio signal flickered on its own. The red on-air light blinked once, twice. The system had booted into live broadcast mode. Mara hadn't touched it. The board's faders rose on their own, sliders creeping upward with soft mechanical sighs. The mic came alive, breathing static. She leaned toward it, unable to stop herself. "Anna?" Her voice echoed back through the monitors. Then another voice joined it, delayed, broken, but unmistakably hers. "Anna? Anna? Anna?" The machine repeated it like a chant, each echo smaller, smaller, as if the sound was crawling away into distance. Then, beneath her own repetition, a whisper. "You took my voice." The room tilted. She stumbled backward, hand against the wall to keep from falling. Her reflection in the glass booth twisted slightly, just enough to make her hesitate. The outline was hers, same frame, same posture,
but the mouth was still moving after she stopped, and when it did, it smiled. By 1 a.m., the power was flickering in intervals. The emergency lights bathed the station in bruised red. Mara sat with her back against the wall, clutching her phone to her chest. She replayed the message again and again in her mind. "They hear through the lines." It meant something. Outside, Hollow Creek was a skeleton town, most of the houses abandoned since the flood 20 years ago. Only a handful of people stayed behind, people like Mara, who couldn't quite let go. And she remembered, vaguely, a story her mother used to tell about the creek bell, a superstition as old as the town. When the river flooded, they said you could hear the drowned ones calling through telephone wires. The sound of running water carried their voices. Anyone who answered after midnight would invite the river back inside. A myth, a story. Still, she felt her throat tighten at the thought. She glanced at the ceiling again. Drip, drip, drip. The sound was still there, only now, when it fell, it left faint streaks of red on the tiles. Not water, something thicker. She turned off the overhead light, leaving only the glow of the console. The darkness wrapped around her like wet cloth. Her reflection disappeared again. "Just static," she said. "It's only static." The clock ticked backward once more. 12:01. Back again. Time looping. Reality circling itself. She pulled out her phone and began recording. "Personal log?" she whispered. "This is Mara Lang, WQRL. Time unknown. I'm documenting strange activity, electrical interference, hallucinations, possibly stress-related." Her voice cracked halfway through the word hallucinations. Something was whispering beneath her words. She played the recording back. "This is Mara Lang. Lang. Ang. You took my voice." She dropped the phone. It landed face up, the screen flashing white. For a second, just a second, a contact name appeared across it. Anna Lang. Calling. The ringtone didn't sound right. Too slow, too deep, like someone had stretched it across a cavern. She stared until the light dimmed and the call faded. The clock blinked. 12:02. Forward again. She almost cried from the relief, until she noticed the condensation forming on the inside of the booth window. A handprint, small, wet, child-sized, and from somewhere behind the glass, faint and close, came that same lullaby. Soft, patient, waiting.
Chapter 3.
Chapter 3. The voices know things they shouldn't. The phone rang again the next night, same time, 12:01. Mara was ready this time, or told herself she was. The studio lights were off, her only illumination the faint red glow from the on-air sign and the green pulse of the console. Outside, the storm had returned, whispering against the windows with soft claws of rain. She waited until the fourth ring before picking up. "Mara Lang," she said, voice flat, rehearsed. Silence. Then a soft inhalation, like someone remembering how to breathe. "Do you remember the cedar tree?" Mara froze. The voice was still distorted, but the shape of that sentence, the rhythm of it, that was Anna. Her sister used to climb that tree when they were kids, out behind the old house by Hollow Creek. It wasn't a memory anyone else would know. "Who is this?" she whispered.
You left me there." Static flared, like the line itself had flinched. Mara slammed the receiver down, but the sound didn't stop. The hum continued through the air, vibrating in the glass, crawling down the wires. She unplugged the landline. The hum kept going. Her breath came in short, broken bursts. "It's not real," she said. "It's interference, that's all." But the words sounded smaller now, less certain. Outside, lightning split the clouds, exposing roots and old flood debris. In that flash, she saw something reflected in the glass, a shadow, a figure near the transmitter tower. Then the light was gone. By morning, Hollow Creek had lost power across half the town. The storm had torn through the riverbank, exposing roots and old flood debris. Mara hadn't slept. She sat in her car in the lot, watching the empty road wind through fog. The radio sign flickered. WQRL 103.3, the voice of Hollow Creek. She thought about Anna again, her little sister, gone 18 years now. They'd found her shoes at the edge of the creek after the flood. Just the shoes. No body. The phone had stopped ringing hours ago, but her cell buzzed now. An unknown number, blocked caller ID. She hesitated, then answered. Static. Then faintly, a child's giggle. "Mara?" Her throat tightened. "It's still counting," the voice whispered. "You can't stop it now." The line went dead. She looked down. Her phone screen displayed a call timer, 00112, frozen, never counting down, never clearing. Back inside the studio, she tried to focus on the midnight segment. No calls, no music, just silence and the hum of electricity. The smell of ozone had returned. She felt it in her teeth, metallic and sharp. She switched on the recorder, voice steady but distant. "This is WQRL, Hollow Creek, midnight transmissions. If you're awake, you're not alone." Her hand trembled as she adjusted the mic. The static behind her words pulsed again, faint but deliberate, forming a rhythm. It almost sounded like whispering, not random, but structured, syllabic. And then it said it. "They know too much." She froze mid-breath. The air conditioning had shut off. The only sound was that repeating whisper woven into the hum of the cables. "They know too much. They know too much." The words grew faster, overlapping, like many mouths speaking through the same throat. She turned off the main feed. The whispering stopped, instantly. Only silence. Mara slumped forward, forehead against the console. She whispered to herself, "If it's not real, then why does it stop when I listen?" No answer. By the third night, listeners had begun sending emails, not about the show itself, but about their dreams. One message read, "I heard your sister's voice last night. She was in my house. She said to tell you the water's rising again." Another said, "I saw a girl standing by my bed. She had no face. She kept whispering, 'They know too much.'" There were dozens of them by morning, some from regulars, some from townspeople Mara didn't even know. One message had no subject line, just an audio file. She clicked it. At first it was just white noise, then, faintly, that same lullaby Anna used to hum before bed, the same melody from the first call. But this time, it was not distorted. It was clear, soft, and sung by two voices. One of them was hers, her own. She didn't remember recording it. She didn't remember ever singing it. Her mind went back to the night of the flood, the night she and Anna had argued, the last night they spoke. Anna wanted to leave Hollow Creek.
Mara wanted to stay, finish school, keep the family station running. "You'll drown here, you just don't know it yet." That was the last thing she ever said. The next day, the flood took her. Now, years later, that same voice, or something using it, was speaking again through these wires, these signals, this air. Mara turned off the computer. She couldn't look at the screen anymore. But when she closed her eyes, the afterimage of the waveform still pulsed behind her lids, red and black, like a heartbeat. Tick, tick, tick. The studio clock hadn't worked since that first night, but she still heard it, always ticking, somewhere behind her. Near dawn, she walked outside to clear her head. Fog blanketed the parking lot. The radio tower loomed above like a broken spine. She noticed something at the base of it. The ground was soft, wet. The rain had turned the dirt into sludge. And there, half buried in the mud, something white glinted under the tower light. She knelt. A bone, small, smooth, maybe from an animal. But beside it, wrapped around the base of the tower, were thin, rusted wires, tangled, knotted, that led straight into the ground, as though feeding something beneath the surface. She followed the line with her eyes and saw the faint outline of old wooden posts, the remnants of the original tower long before the flood. The wires pulsed once, faintly, like veins under skin. She stepped back. The air smelled of rain and rot. From the woods beyond, something whispered her name again, not from the phone, not from the static, but from the open air. Mara. She turned toward the sound, but the fog shifted, swallowing the road and everything in it. When she returned to the booth that night, the studio felt smaller, the hum louder. Every light flickered in rhythm like a slow heartbeat. She sat in front of the console, staring at her reflection in the dark glass of the sound booth. Her lips moved, but she didn't speak. Still a voice came through the monitors. "They know too much." Then, in perfect clarity, "We do, too." The sound cut. The power flickered once, and for just a moment, one impossibly small, unrecorded second, Mara saw something behind her reflection. A second silhouette, standing just over her shoulder.
Chapter 4.
Chapter 4. The signal isn't coming from here. The hum had changed. Mara noticed it first thing when she arrived at the station. Softer now, like breathing beneath the walls. She turned the key in the lock, and the door hesitated before opening. It felt heavy, swollen with humidity. The smell of wet wood and burnt wires greeted her. She hadn't been sleeping again. The circles under her eyes were almost purple. On the console, her coffee cup from last night still steamed. That shouldn't have been possible. By noon, she'd called in the station's part-time technician, Eli Parsons, an older man, quiet, usually calm. He'd been around since before the flood, knew the wiring better than anyone. He arrived carrying a metal case of tools and a cheap thermos. The first thing he said, standing in the doorway, was, "You've been getting bleed through." "What does that mean?" He set his case down, crouched by the rack of transmitters. A signal crossing another frequency happens when the ground currents change, weather, humidity, solar interference. She folded her arms. "And what about voices?" He paused, glanced up. "Voices?" "On dead air, the static, talking back." He gave her that look people use when they don't want to call you crazy but can't help it. Could be radio ghosting, could be coincidence. Her expression didn't change. He sighed.
pulling out a handheld analyzer. "All right, let's see what your ghosts are saying." For an hour, they moved between the control room and the back hallway where the cables snaked through the walls. The hum followed them everywhere, low, constant, threaded through the air. Eli checked the readings. His device emitted faint beeps. "Strange," he murmured. "What is?" "This line," he said, tapping one of the main frequency bands. "You're broadcasting on 93 kilohertz." "That's normal." He shook his head. "It shouldn't be live. That tower was shut down 10 years ago." Mara blinked. "What tower?" "The one up near Willow Bend, the old relay that collapsed in the fire. You can't transmit from there. It's gone." He adjusted the antenna and pointed toward the hills through the studio window. "See that ridgeline? That's where the signal's coming from." Mara stared through the glass. Fog had already begun to gather over the distant tree line, smothering the landscape in pale gray. Her stomach tightened. They drove out that afternoon. The road twisted upward through the woods, branches clawing at the car as they passed. The radio in the dashboard hissed constantly, no matter what station they tuned to. Mara turned it off. The silence was worse. Eli followed the map on his phone, but halfway there, the GPS began to stutter, the blue dot spinning aimlessly. He frowned. "We're close." "How close?" "Half a mile, maybe less." The woods thickened, the light dimmed. Every few minutes, the trees parted enough to reveal the remains of old utility poles, their wires hanging limp like veins cut loose. Finally, the car rolled to a stop before chain-link fence half swallowed by vines. A faded sign hung crookedly. "Property of Hollow Creek Broadcast Authority, decommissioned 2014. The gate was unlocked. The wind pushed it open with a long metallic sigh. Inside the fence, the ground was uneven and soft. Burned patches still marked the earth where the tower had once stood, blackened scars shaped like ribs. At the center sat a small concrete bunker, half collapsed, its roof buckled inward. Police tape fluttered in tatters around the entrance. Eli stopped walking. "I remember this," he said quietly. "They said a transformer blew. 2 workers died trying to shut it down." "When?" 10 years ago. Same week as the flood." Mara felt her pulse pick up. "The same week Anna..." She didn't finish the sentence. The air here was colder, heavier. Every sound seemed muffled. Even the wind sounded like it was holding its breath. At the edge of the clearing stood something that didn't belong. A phone booth. Burned, melted almost to its frame. The glass was gone, only the blackened receiver hanging by its cord. Mara stepped closer. The smell hit her first, scorched metal and something sweet beneath it, like overripe fruit. "Don't touch that," Eli warned. But she'd already had. Her fingers brushed the melted receiver. It was cold. And under the ash, she saw letters carved faintly into the metal. "You were supposed to answer." Her throat dried. "Eli, do you see this?" But Eli was standing a few feet away, staring at the concrete bunker. "There's something playing in there," he murmured. They approached slowly. From inside came a faint clicking sound, rhythmic, mechanical, like a tape recorder that refused to die. Eli crouched by the doorway, shined his flashlight inside. The beam caught a small, dust-covered cassette player on the floor, still spinning. He pressed stop. then play. The voice that came out was unmistakable. You were supposed to answer. Mara's knees nearly gave out. The tape hissed, rewound itself with a soft whine, then played again. You were supposed to answer. Each repetition grew slower, deeper, distorted until it no longer sounded human. She backed away, shaking her head. This is some kind of trick. Somebody recorded this. Eli didn't answer. His face had gone pale. Mara, he said quietly, this recorder, it's not battery powered. What do you mean? It's wired. He pointed toward the corner of the bunker where thin metal cables ran into the concrete floor, still humming faintly. Mara knelt beside them, touched the wires. They were warm. The hum matched the sound that haunted her studio. Tick, tick, tick. Eli straightened, scanning the walls. There's current moving through here, but the lines were cut years ago. This whole site is dead. It's not dead, Mara whispered. The tape recorder clicked off. Silence fell so thick it felt alive. Then, a faint whisper from somewhere behind the wall. Mara? She froze. Eli heard it too. His flashlight trembled. You took my voice. The whisper seeped from the cracks in the wall, like breath leaking through stone. Mara stumbled backward. Her foot caught on a piece of debris. She fell, scraping her hand on concrete. The wound bled instantly, small red beads catching the beam of Eli's light. When her blood hit the floor, the wires hummed louder. Eli grabbed her arm. We're leaving! But she couldn't look away. The blood was seeping into the cracks, tracing the lines of the old concrete, following a shape, a circle, drawn long ago, half faded but still visible. Inside it, carved into the cement, was a single phrase. Answer the call. They ran. The forest seemed to close around them. Every tree looked the same. Every sound echoed back wrong. By the time they reached the car, Mara's lungs burned. She looked over her shoulder. The fog had thickened, swallowing the fence, the bunker, the tower's ghost. When Eli turned the key, the car wouldn't start. He tried again. The engine sputtered, then died. In the silence that followed, the dashboard radio crackled. Faint static first, then her own recorded voice from last night's show. If you're awake, you're not alone. She shut it off, hand shaking. Eli stared ahead, whispering something under his breath. What are you saying? She asked. It's still counting, he said, pointing to the car's digital clock. 12:01. The seconds didn't move. They never moved again. Back at the station, hours later, Mara sat alone in the dark. Eli hadn't spoken since the drive.
Chapter 5.
Chapter 5. Dead Air Has a Pulse. The power went out at 11:56 p.m. Every light in the station died in a synchronized flicker, leaving Mara staring at her reflection in the darkened glass of the broadcast booth. For a breath, the silence felt complete, pure, cold, and absolute. Then the red on-air bulb pulsed back to life. It shouldn't have. The generator hadn't even kicked in, yet the light beat once, twice, like a slow, tired heart. The studio monitors glowed faintly, blue screens trembling with static veins, and through the dead air came a low hum, alive, breathing, threaded with whispers too soft to name. Mara reached for the board, her fingers trembling over the faders. Everything was off. Every mic, every line. But the signal meter still moved, little green bars rising and falling as though someone were speaking from inside the silence. "Dead air isn't silent," she whispered, the old radio superstition clawing its way up from memory. The hum deepened. "It's listening," finished a voice. Her throat locked. The words were her own, but she hadn't said them. A faint pop cracked through the speakers, then the broadcast resumed on its own. The opening jingle of Midnight Voices played, warped, slowed by half. Mara's pre-recorded greeting followed, but it wasn't her. The tone was lower, hollow, dragging each word like a funeral march. "Good evening, listeners." Her voice, yet not hers, echoed through the empty building. She turned up the volume just enough to hear what came next. "We begin tonight with names. All the names we forgot to say." The list that followed wasn't one she'd ever recorded. It was a string of obituaries, each name punctuated by a click, like the sound of a tape reel splicing itself back together. Martin Hale, 63, accidental fire. June Peterson, 27, drowned, unsolved. Lillian Lang. Her sister's name, Mara froze. 26, presumed deceased. She lunged for the board, slamming every button she could find. The faders fought back, vibrating under her palms like live wires. The entire console thrummed like an animal trapped under metal. "Stop!" she shouted, though the sound barely carried. The power cut again. Darkness rushed in. And still the broadcast continued. She found a flashlight in the engineer's drawer and swept its thin beam across the hall. Dust floated like ash. Every shadow seemed to breathe. From the transmitter room came a slow mechanical grinding, something turning without power. She followed it, her heartbeat sinking to the pulse of the dead signal. Inside, the main transmitter tower blinked faintly red through the window. It wasn't connected to the backup grid. It shouldn't be functioning at all. Yet the signal meter on the wall flickered steadily, reading live broadcast, 12:07 a.m. Her own face appeared in the reflection again, pale and divided by static. A sudden feedback squeal erupted from the monitors, then layered beneath it, her sister's lullaby, off-key, slowed, playing backward. Mara dropped the flashlight. It rolled across the floor, the beam spinning wildly. The lullaby stopped mid-note. And then, through the static, came a second voice. "You're late." She staggered back. "No!" The transmission stuttered, breaking into fragments of breath and static, like someone too close to the microphone. "You were supposed to answer." The words pulsed through the speakers in perfect rhythm with the red on-air light. It was beating faster now. Mara pressed her palms to her ears. "You're not real." The lights along the mixer board flared orange, each one a heartbeat, each one whispering her denial back to her in reverse. "You're not real. You're not real. You're not..." Then the voice, soft, almost kind. "But I am still here." She ran down the narrow hallway, past the bulletin board covered in faded flyers and emergency numbers no one had called in years. The whole station smelled of ozone and dust. The air felt charged, thick with the weight of something listening. When she burst into the lobby, the big front windows reflected the streetlights outside and dozens of faces looking in. For a second, she thought they were people gathered in the dark, pressed against the glass. Then she realized they were reflections. Her own reflection multiplied, delayed, each version of her staring back with slightly different expressions. One of them mouthed something. She couldn't hear it, but she knew the shape of the words. Answer it. The phone on the receptionist's desk began to ring. Old landline, beige plastic, the kind that shouldn't have power when the station didn't. It rang once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th, it stopped. Then came the whisper through every intercom speaker in the building, her sister's voice, low and close. Dead air has a pulse, Mara. Listen. A slow, heavy thump shook through the floorboards, once, then again, like something buried deep beneath the station had begun to beat. Mara stumbled back toward the studio. She thought of Eli, the technician, and how he'd warned her that radio signals could bounce for decades, ghosting across frequencies, carrying echoes of voices long dead. He'd called it afterwave resonance, sound caught between channels. But this wasn't echo, it was intention. The boards hummed as she approached, every dial twitching toward the red. She could hear faint breathing beneath the static now, steady and familiar. "Lillian," she whispered. The broadcast answered with her sister's laugh, short, cracked, and heartbreakingly young. Mara's knees went weak. The laugh turned into words, gliding through the static like a secret shared. "You left me there." "No," she said. "You're gone." "You left me in the fire." The control board lights flared orange. A smell like burnt wood filled the booth. "I tried to save you." The red on-air light blinked twice, then held. "Then save me now."
The monitors showed a waveform, moving on its own. The pattern pulsed like a heartbeat, louder, faster. Beneath it, the hum of the station synced perfectly with Mara's own pulse, until she couldn't tell which was which. The microphone in front of her clicked on without her touch. Her voice echoed back from the speakers, delayed by half a second. "Good evening, listeners," she said automatically, her mind splitting between now and the memory of that first call. "This is Mara Lang, and you're tuned to Midnight Voices." But in the playback, her voice fractured. "This is Mara Lang, and you're tuned to Midnight Vices." She blinked. The word hung there, distorted. "Who's there?" she demanded. The response came not through the speakers, but from the metal beneath her hands. A faint rhythmic tapping. Dot, dot, dash. Dot, dot, dash. Over and over. It took her too long to translate. When she did, the words chilled her to bone. I. Just that. The letter repeating, endlessly. A voice trying to be singular. Mara backed away. "You're not her." But the signal deepened, the low hum resolving into a slow chant. Her sister's voice multiplied, layered, thousands of versions whispering together through the static. Dead air isn't silent, it's listening. Dead air isn't silent, it's listening. Dead air isn't silent, it's listening. The chant built until it filled every corner of the station. The light surged bright white. Then silence. True silence. Mara stood trembling in the booth, staring at the dead console. Everything was off again. The on-air light was dark. She waited for her pulse to slow, for the hum to fade. It didn't. From somewhere beneath the floor, the pulse continued. Thump, thump, thump. Steady, patient, waiting. She realized the rhythm wasn't random. It was counting. 12 beats, a pause, then 12 more. The station clock above the booth read the same. And in the thin slice of silence between beats, Mara heard her sister's voice one last time. Barely audible, breath against the glass. "You on the air, Mara."
Chapter 6.
Chapter 6. They're calling from beneath the station. It started with a sound, not the hum of the tower or the whisper of dead air. This was lower, closer. A slow, metallic creak beneath the floorboards, followed by the faint rhythm of steps. Mara froze at the booth door, one hand still on the frame. She told herself it was the pipes. The old building was full of them, rusted vanes and hollow echoes. But these footsteps had weight. They stopped when she stopped. They moved when she moved. She leaned down, pressing her ear to the floor. A breath of cold air slipped through the crack by the wall vent. It smelled like damp concrete and dust. Then she heard it. 10, 9, 8. A voice, counting, soft, rhythmic, as if whispered into a microphone deep underground. The countdown reached 1, then silence. Her breath clouded in front of her. The heat was still running. She could hear the vent humming, but the air coming up from below was ice. Mara went to the hallway, tossing the red exit sign flickering like a dying pulse. The stairwell door was half open. Beyond it, a narrow flight led to the maintenance level. She'd never been down there, not once in the 5 years she'd worked here. But now the sound came again, faint, distant, a phone ringing. The stairs groaned beneath her weight. Each step felt deeper than the last, like the building itself was swallowing her. Halfway down, the ringing stopped. Then came another sound, the drag of something heavy across concrete. Mara reached the bottom and found herself in a long corridor lined with metal pipes and cable bundles. The lights overhead flickered in a slow, rhythmic pulse, on, off, like a heartbeat trying to remember its timing. She moved cautiously, her flashlight beam cutting through clouds of dust. Signs on the walls still bore the station's old call letters, WNRV, Northern Valley Radio. She hadn't realized that was the station's name before it rebranded as Midnight Voices. A door stood at the end of the hall, sealed with rusted chains. Faded paint above it read, "Maintenance, authorized personnel only." The ringing began again, from behind that door. She stepped closer. Each ring sounded warped, delayed, as though traveling through water. She tried the handle. It turned. The chains weren't locked. They were looped through like a warning, not a barrier. The door swung open with a dry groan. Cold air poured out. Inside was darkness thicker than anything she'd known. The beam of her flashlight revealed a low ceiling, concrete walls, and a floor layered with dust. A single corridor stretched ahead, bending slightly to the right. The air smelled of burnt insulation and old rain. The ringing continued, joined now by a second, then a third. She followed them. Her shoes scraped over scattered bits of cable and broken tiles.
The farther she went, the more the air seemed to vibrate, like sound without direction, building pressure in her chest. The hall widened into a large chamber. Mara stopped at the threshold. A control room, ancient, sealed off, hidden beneath years of reconstruction. The walls were lined with switchboards, cracked monitors, rotary phones, dozens of them mounted in uneven rows. Some had labels, others hung loose, cords coiled like veins. Every phone was ringing, not all at once, but in sequence, one after another, a cascade of sound that looped endlessly around the room. Mara's light swept over the labels, her breath caught. Each tag bore a name. She moved closer. Walter Dean, Lillian Lang, Marion Brooks, Elijah Cooper. Elijah. Her hand shook. He'd only gone home an hour ago. She grabbed one of the receivers. The ringing stopped immediately. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Then, static. Soft, breathing, static. "Mara?" said a voice. Her sister's voice. She dropped the phone. It swung against the wall with a dull thud, the cord twisting around itself like a noose. The next phone began to ring. She turned toward it, trembling. Its label read, Eleanor Morris, 1954. The ringing grew sharper, louder, like it was inside her head. She snatched the receiver and pressed it to her ear. "Who is this?" Silence. Then a distant whisper. "We're still counting." The phone went dead. She stepped back. The air in the room shifted, pressing against her skin like static charge before a storm. Each phone began to vibrate now, cords twitching, receivers rattling. Her flashlight flickered. On the wall opposite the switchboards was something she hadn't noticed before. Another door, half sealed with concrete. The outline still visible, but the frame sunken like a scar. Faded paint above it spelled two words, Control Room B. The phones fell silent. Then, in unison, they rang once, sharp and synchronized. A single pulse. Mara's heart matched it. She moved toward the sealed door. The concrete was cracked, thin enough to see wires running behind it. She pressed her ear to the wall. Behind it, breathing. Slow. Human. She stumbled back. The air on the other side mirrored hers, syncing perfectly. When she stopped, it stopped. When she whispered, she heard her own echo answer an instant later. The realization crawled through her. The wall wasn't separating her from something. It was recording her. Listening. A low hum filled the chamber. The old monitors blinked on one by one, their glass faces glowing faint green. Across every screen, the same phrase began to appear, letter by letter. You were supposed to answer. Mara backed into the center of the room. The hum turned into that now familiar pulse. Thump, thump, thump. The sound was coming from beneath the floor. She crouched, running her hand along the cracked tiles until she found a loose one. When she pried it up, she saw metal beneath, a hatch. Faded engraving read, Emergency Broadcast Feed, 1953. The ringing started again. This time, every phone joined in together. She reached for the hatch handle. It was cold enough to burn. Thump, thump, thump. She hesitated, eyes darting to the wall. Her sister's nameplate phone vibrated violently, its cord stretched tight. She grabbed it again. What do you want from me? The reply came not as words, but as a burst of overlapping voices, hundreds of them, whispering in layers, her sister among them, clear and calm. "Answer us." She slammed the receiver down. No. The hum deepened, the hatch began to rattle, the floor around it pulsing in time with the unseen heartbeat below. Thump, thump, thump. Then beneath the static, faint laughter, her sister's again, echoing through the lines. "You can't keep the signal out, Mara." The phone stopped ringing. A mechanical click filled the silence. The old clock above the switchboard started ticking backwards. She turned toward the exit, heart racing, but the corridor she had come through was gone. The doorway had sealed, replaced by solid concrete. Only one exit remained: the hatch. The hum grew louder, the air vibrated, the red on-air light flickered to life, glowing through decades of dust. Live broadcast. Mara stared at the hatch. "Dead air isn't silent. It's listening," she whispered. From beneath the metal, a whisper rose, close enough to feel against her skin. "Then listen closer." The hatch handle turned on its own. A hiss of cold air escaped, carrying the smell of earth and static. And then faintly she heard them, the phones below, hundreds more, all ringing at once. Every voice in the town, every name from the obituaries, calling from beneath the station. Mara stepped back, flashlight trembling in her hand. The sound of the ringing grew until it filled everything: walls, air, bone. She pressed her palms to her ears, but it didn't stop. It wasn't just noise anymore. It was rhythm.
It was heartbeat. It was the pulse. Thump, thump, thump. The hatch opened 2 inches. A voice rose through the crack. Soft, familiar. "Mara, you were supposed to answer." She fell to her knees, trembling. "Lillian!" The voice turned to a whisper. "We're still counting." Then, silence. The on-air light blinked once, twice, and died.
Chapter 7.
Chapter 7. Every voice wants a listener. The ringing didn't stop. Even after Mara sealed the hatch, even after she dragged the old filing cabinet over it and unplugged the power feed, she can still hear them. Faintly. Under everything. Behind the hum of the studio lights, beneath her breathing, between her heartbeat and the silence after. They kept calling. She'd gone 3 days without leaving the booth. Maybe 4. The clocks no longer agreed. One said 3:06. Another said midnight. Her phone battery had died hours ago. But even with the screen black, she swore she saw it flicker, just once, with a number she recognized. Her sister's. If I stop listening, they'll find another way in. That was what she told herself now. The listeners, the real ones, the living ones, had stopped calling after the second night. She hadn't noticed, didn't care. The phone line still buzzed. The airwaves still hissed. Someone was always there. Someone was always waiting. Mara sat hunched over the console, face lit by the red on-air light. She'd kept it glowing since the tunnels. The light felt like company. It was easier this way. If she stayed on air, she wasn't alone. The first new voice came at dawn. She'd been whispering to herself just to keep the air moving, reading the weather report from 2 days ago. Then, mid-sentence, a man's voice slid over hers, deep, wet, too close to the mic. "Still counting, Mara?" She flinched. The meter spiked. Her eyes swept the board. No channel open but hers. "Who's there?" Static rolled across the speakers like someone breathing through sand. Then laughter, soft, choking, familiar. Her stomach turned cold. It was the same voice from the hatch. Her sister's. "Mara, I told you, you can't keep the signal out." Mara's throat closed. "You're not her." Silence, then a whisper, almost tender. "Every voice wants a listener." The line cut. She sat motionless, headset pressed tight, listening for something more. The air returned to a low hum. But she knew that phrase now. She could feel it, repeating itself, threading into her brain with every beat. Every voice wants a listener. Every voice wants. By the second night, the phones began again. Not one at a time anymore, all of them, every line in the building ringing in impossible harmony. She didn't pick them up at first. She just listened, watching the red lights flash and die, like a pulse. She counted each ring. 10 per line. 10, 9, 8. Always down to 1. On the 11th sequence, she couldn't help herself. She grabbed the nearest receiver. "Hello?" A breath answered, then a whisper, not one voice, but dozens overlapping, words blurred, desperate, pleading. "Please, please someone, I'm still here. Tell my son. It's cold. They said you'd listen." Mara's throat tightened. "I hear you. I hear all of you." The static settled. She could almost imagine relief in the silence that followed, a pause, soft as exhalation. Then the next phone rang. She answered that one too. Then another. And another. By the third day, she was answering them in shifts, recording fragments, cataloging the voices like a librarian of the dead. Her logbook filled with names. Some she recognized from the town's obituary list she'd once read on air. Others were new. Each one wanted something simple, to be remembered. One begged her to say his name out loud. One asked if her dog was still alive. One asked what year it was. One asked if the snow had stopped. Each call ended the same way, with a sound like the ocean swallowing itself, and then, faintly, the countdown. 10, 9, 8. It was never clear who was counting. She stopped sleeping. The clock faces blurred together. Shadows seemed to move differently now, like the light had forgotten to obey. The glass in the booth vibrated faintly, though no wind blew outside. When she closed her eyes, she saw cables twisting like roots, wires pulsing under the floor, red lights blooming like embers. The station was alive, and she was its heartbeat. Her reflection in the window looked pale, hollow-eyed, the kind of face you see in late-night news clips of people who've seen too much. "If I stop listening, they'll find another way in." She whispered it every few minutes. It helped. A mantra, a rhythm. At some point, she didn't know when, the signal changed. The voices began to overlap in perfect unison, their words aligning like a choir. "We're still counting. We're still counting. We're still counting." Mara pressed the mic button. "I know. I hear you. But what are you counting to?" The reply came at once, low and thick with static. "To the next one who listens." She looked up. The on-air light flickered. For the first time since she began this vigil, she felt something other than fear. Recognition. That's what they wanted. That's what she wanted too, wasn't it? When she'd first started in radio, she used to imagine a single listener out there, someone alone driving through fog at midnight, hearing her voice and feeling less empty. Maybe that was all this was. Maybe death worked the same way. Every voice needs someone to hear it, even the ones that can't stop counting. The next morning, or night, she began broadcasting again. Not the scheduled show, not the playlists or weather bulletins, just them. She rerouted the feed, patched every phone line directly through the board. Now the entire town could hear them too. 1,000 dead voices whispering through every car speaker, every kitchen radio, every forgotten frequency. She sat back in the chair, eyes half closed, listening. The sound wasn't frightening anymore. It was vast. A sea of words and names and breaths, all blending into one great pulse. She was part of it now. When she spoke, the voices answered. Sometimes they repeated her words exactly, sometimes they twisted them as if testing the shape of her thoughts. They said, "Mara, Mara." Silence. Then laughter, small, broken. "You're one of us now." Hours later, she noticed the window. Outside the booth, the hallway was dark. Darker than it should have been. The emergency lights were out. The only glow came from inside her studio. But in the reflection, she saw something move behind her chair. A figure. She turned. Nothing there. When she looked back at the glass, the shape was closer. Her own outline maybe, but not matching her movement. The reflection smiled. "Every voice wants a listener." Her breath fogged the glass. Then the reflection lifted its hand, slow, deliberate, and placed it against the inside of the pane. She stared. It was inside the reflection, but the glass pulsed warm beneath her palm. The phone rang. She answered without thinking. The line hissed, then clicked. "Mara. Mara?" Her heart stopped. It was Eli. "Eli, where are you? I've been trying to reach you. You've been on air for days." His voice was strained, scared. "Mara, something's wrong with the signal. People are hearing static cut through him." "What, Eli?" His voice broke apart, fragmented into whispers. "Get out of there. It's using..." Then a sound. A wet, rhythmic sound. Thump, thump, thump. Her sister's voice whispered beneath it. "He's next, Mara." The call dropped. Mara stared at the dead line. Then the other phones began to ring again. All of them. Every single one. The light above the door flickered, then steadied. On air. She pressed the mic button, her voice trembling but clear. "This is Mara Jensen, Midnight Voices." She paused, glancing at the window where her reflection still waited, hand pressed to the glass. "If you're hearing this, you're already part of the signal." The hum beneath the floor deepened. The cables along the wall shivered, glowing faint red like veins. She smiled, small, tired, surrendered. "If I stop listening, they'll find another way in." Her reflection smiled back. "Then don't stop."
Chapter 8.
Chapter 8. The Town That Forgot How to Sleep. The first reports came just after midnight. A woman on Elm Street called the local paper to say her phone had rung. Nothing strange about that, except she hadn't had service in 3 years. The line had been cut when her husband died. She said she answered anyway. Said she heard her husband's voice, just breathing, just waiting. She hung up. The phone rang again. By morning, the paper's editor had 20 messages like it, and by the following night, the entire town of Harlow Bend was awake. Mara didn't know any of this yet. Inside the studio, time had turned to liquid. The fluorescent lights flickered in an uneven pulse that seemed to sync with her own breathing. The air tasted like copper and ozone. She'd been awake for... she wasn't sure. Her reflection in the control room glass had grown thinner, darker beneath the eyes. She no longer broadcast news or music. She just listened. The on-air light had become a sun that never set. Beneath it, the voices never stopped. Outside, the town was unraveling in quiet ways. Neighbors stopped waving. Curtains stayed drawn. The grocery store on Main began locking its doors before dusk. People said they could hear whispers through the canned music, snatches of conversation that didn't belong to anyone alive. It was small things at first. A hum in the electrical lines, a faint counting sound from unplugged radios. 10, 9, 8. Then the calls began. Disconnected phones, rotary dials, toy receivers, all of them ringing. Children answered first. They always do. One little girl told her mother she'd spoken to the lady in the static. The mother asked what the lady had said. The girl just smiled. She said you forgot. Another boy, age 9, began waking his parents each night whispering the same line. We all heard it. We all answered. When asked what he meant, he said the voices were under the town. By the third night, none of the children were sleeping. They sat at windows, eyes open, heads tilted, as if listening for something far away. The local pastor tried to calm people. He gathered a small crowd in the church basement and read from the book of Job. But halfway through, the power went out. The emergency lights came on, red, pulsing. Someone said they heard the organ playing upstairs, but when they checked, the sanctuary was empty. On the altar lay a small cassette tape. No one claimed it. When the pastor played it, a woman's voice filled the church speakers, soft and deliberate. Mara Jensen, Midnight Voices. Then a whisper layered over her own. We all heard it. We all answered. The recording ended with a sound like hundreds of breaths exhaling in unison. No one came to church after that. In the station, Mara's world had shrunk to the glow of the console. She barely ate, barely spoke. When she did, her voice came out low, almost reverent. If you can hear me, you're not alone. The response came instantly through the feedback, a tapestry of voices overlapping hers. We all hear you. We all answered. Her hand trembled on the mic switch. She should have been afraid, but she wasn't. Not anymore. Something inside her had shifted, quietly, like a door easing open after years of rust. This was what the dead wanted, to be heard, to have their words returned to them. And she wanted the same thing. She thought of her sister's laughter, the way it had echoed in the static that first night. She thought of the countdown. 10, 9, 8. Somewhere it was still ticking. The police tried to trace the signal again. Technician Eli Barker, the only one still willing to go near the station, swore the frequency didn't exist anymore. The log showed nothing transmitting after 1201. And yet, every radio, every phone, every device still caught it. Not from above, not from satellites, from below. One officer who joined him on the scan quit that same night. He told his wife he'd heard something breathing through the floor. By dawn, his wife woke to find every mirror in their house covered in condensation. Handprints pressed into the glass. 10 of them. Mara's broadcasts were changing too. The voices had begun to repeat things she never said. Entire sentences, full thoughts, spoken in her tone but not hers. She'd play them back and listen, trying to find where she'd slipped, where her mind had blurred. But the recordings didn't lie. They weren't her. Still, they used her words, her rhythm, even her breath between lines, as if the signal itself was learning her. We all heard it. We all answered. The phrase became a chant on air. At first, she thought it was the one repeating it. Then she realized the voices were speaking over her, syncing perfectly. When she paused, they didn't. When she tried to stop, they grew louder, until the entire booth vibrated with sound. That was when she noticed the walls. Hairline cracks spreading in the soundproof glass. The faint pulse in the metal panels, as if something was moving behind them, breathing, waiting. She turned up the volume and the noise in the speakers deepened to a heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. Her pulse matched it. She leaned close to the mic, whispering, "What do you want from me?" The answer came through every speaker in the station, layered and vast. To be remembered. Then softer, her sister's voice cutting through the rest. You promised you'd never stop listening. Outside, the insomnia spread. The local diner stayed open 24 hours just to give people somewhere bright to sit. The owner said the silence at home felt too heavy.
Even in the light, people were jumpy. They said their names didn't sound right when they spoke them. One woman smashed every clock in her house because she could hear the ticking through her walls even after they stopped. 10, 9, 8. It became the town's rhythm. Harlow Bend forgot how to sleep. Some nights the air itself seemed to hum. People claimed they could hear the station even with their radios off. A faint voice drifting from drain pipes, through the plumbing, from beneath the earth. Old miners whispered about the tunnels under the ridge, the ones sealed after the cave-in years ago. They said the first phone lines had been laid through those tunnels, spooling over the buried dead from the mining disaster. Some said that was where the signal came from. Not broadcast, not interference, resonance, the dead remembering themselves. By the fifth night of wakefulness, Mara's voice had changed. The sweetness was gone, replaced with something slower, darker. Every word she spoke seemed to hang longer than it should, echoing faintly before fading. Listeners said her show had become hypnotic, impossible to turn off. They said her pauses felt alive. When she whispered, people whispered back. When she stopped speaking, the silence hummed. Some said they could feel it, an invisible pressure on the air, like the pause before thunder. A few swore they could hear someone breathing just behind her microphone, but there was never anyone there. In the last hour before dawn, Mara leaned back, exhaustion curling through her bones. The studio was dark except for the glow of the on-air light and the faint shimmer of the meters. The phones were quiet now, not silent, just waiting. She pressed the mic button one final time. "Everyone's awake. I can feel you. I can hear you." Her voice trembled. But what happens when we stop? For a long moment, nothing. Then faintly, from the speaker at her elbow, "We don't stop, Mara." She closed her eyes. The sound spread. Through the hallways, the floors, the walls, it crawled into the wires, into the town's bones, until it was everywhere. We all heard it. We all answered. The reflection in the window moved before she did, smiling, whispering. "You finally learned, Mara. Dead air isn't silence. It's listening."
Chapter 8.
Chapter 9. The Final Broadcast. The storm began without warning. It came rolling across the horizon like a bruise, low and purple and trembling with static. From the studio window, Mara watched the first flashes cut across the valley, thin, white cracks in a sky that had forgotten how to sleep. The transmitter tower stood black against it, unmoving, its red beacon dark for the first time in weeks. The station's hallway lights flickered, then went out. All that remained was the hum, low, deep, beneath the floorboards, in the walls, in the space between heartbeats. It was the same tone she'd heard for days, the one buried under every call, every whisper, every silence. The one that wasn't coming from her world anymore. Mara sat before the microphone, hands trembling on the console. The on-air bulb glowed red, faintly pulsing. She could feel its heat through the glass, rhythmic like something breathing. "If I stop listening, they'll find another way in." That mantra had turned from protection to prison. She said it again under her breath, as if the act of speaking it could keep her grounded in her own skin. But the skin felt thin tonight. The studio smelled of ozone and wet dust. Rain hit the roof in hard, uneven bursts, like someone knocking from above. Through the static of her monitors came the first whispers, familiar now. Names, fragments, half-sentences looped and overlapped until they formed something that almost sounded like a plea. "Keep the line open. Keep the line open. Keep..." She cut the gain, but the voices didn't fade. They grew sharper, closer. Then came another sound. A breath. Her own voice, recorded, warped, echoing through her headset. "This is Mara. I'm still here." She froze,
That had been her sign-off last week, the night she'd blacked out mid-broadcast and woken to find every phone in the control room off the hook. But the tone now was wrong. It wasn't tired. It wasn't human. It was hungry. The backup generator groaned to life somewhere deep in the building. One light flickered on above her, swinging slightly as though something had brushed it. Shadows shifted across the soundproof glass. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw movement inside the recording booth. A silhouette standing behind the chair. The chair where her sister once sat. Lena's last night was here in this room, before the accident, before the calls began. Mara's fingers moved to the playback reel beside her, almost unconsciously. The tape inside was unmarked, the same one she'd found in the sealed control room below. The one labeled only with a hand-scratched word, "Remember." She hesitated. The hum deepened, and she pressed play. At first, there was only white noise. Then a faint voice came through, layered, whispering beneath the static. Lena's voice. "Do you hear me now?" Her throat tightened. "Lena, I tried to turn it off, but it keeps counting." The static swelled, swallowing the words. Mara adjusted the dial, her pulse in sync with the signal's pulse. The numbers returned, faint, relentless. 12, 13, 14. It wasn't a countdown this time. It was a tally, something keeping score. Then another voice joined in, older, lower. The voice of a man she didn't recognize, but she had heard him before. From the first calls, the one who'd said her name before she'd given it. Every voice wants a listener. The power flickered again. The reel spun faster on its own, tape slapping against the capstan. She reached to stop it, but her hand froze halfway. The room had grown cold. Not empty, cold. The glass fogged in front of her. Words appeared there, written from the inside, backward. But she could still read them. We all heard it. We all answered. The phones on the wall began to ring. 1, then 3, then all of them, each ring slightly offbeat, a sickening, discordant chorus. She stood, dizzy. The ringing grew louder, sharper, like metal on glass. Each phone was labeled, just as before. Thomas Avery, June Peters, R. Halloway, the dead of the town. And one more, newly written in a trembling hand. Lena Halt. The receiver lifted itself. The ringing stopped. Mara's breath caught. "You said you'd keep the line open," Lena's voice whispered through the air, not through a speaker, but from the air itself. The lights dimmed to a pulse. "You promised." Something moved in the reflection of the glass. Not her. Not Lena. Something between. The reflection leaned forward as she stepped back. Its mouth moved a moment too late, lagging behind her words. "This is Mara. I'm still here," she said hoarsely, pressing the mic closer. Her voice trembled, but the reflection didn't. "I'm going to listen," she said, "to all of you." The hum rose. The air vibrated like a plucked string. Outside, lightning split the sky in two, and for a breathless instant, the tower's beacon flared red again. In that red flash, every phone lifted, every mouth spoke, every dead voice answered. The studio dissolved into sound. Not words, not cries, just want. 1,000 whispers folding into one, calling for her, through her, as her. Mara clutched the mic. "If I stop listening, they'll find another way in." Lena finished for her. Their voices overlapped perfectly. The monitors crackled, showing static that pulsed like a heartbeat. Through the distortion, she could see faint shapes, streets, houses, the whole town, lit from below by flickering lights. Each house glowed faintly, and from each came the same red pulse as the tower. She realized it then. The signal had spread. The town wasn't listening to her anymore. She was listening to them. The generator sputtered out. The last light died. Only the red on-air sign remained, humming faintly, its glow flickering across her face. She leaned into the mic, voice trembling, but clear. "Lena, are you there?" "Always." The static deepened, reshaping into a rhythm. Breathing in, breathing out. Mara closed her eyes. The microphone warmed beneath her hand, as though something on the other side was reaching back. "It's still counting," Lena's voice murmured. Mara smiled faintly. "Then we keep the line open." The words overlapped, hers and Lena's, perfectly in sync. "Keep the line open. Keep the line open. Keep..." The sound cut. Hours later, the storm broke. The station sat dark and silent on the hill, the beacon dead, the air thick with static that no one could trace. But across the valley, in living rooms and empty kitchens, radios that hadn't worked in years flickered on for a moment. A voice, soft, uncertain, familiar, slipped through the static. "This is Mara Holt. I'm still here." Then a second voice joined hers. "Keep the line open." And somewhere deep in the earth beneath the station, something began to hum again, low, steady, counting up.
Chapter 10.
Chapter 10. The Station Still Broadcasts. It began again on a Wednesday. The kind of night where the air feels swollen with static, the sky too dark to be real. Long after the rain stopped, a low hum still pressed against the town, soft, steady, like breath behind the walls. The burned-out shell of station WKRX sat on the hill, black and silent against the clouds. The fire had eaten everything, equipment, tapes, even the tower. Investigators said lightning. Locals said something older. But no one went up there anymore. The smell hadn't left. And yet, on nights like this, the broadcast returned. Truckers first noticed it. The ones who drove the midnight stretch between Cold Valley and Route 19, where the land flattened out and the air seemed to thin. Their radios would flicker for a second, just static, then the soft click of a mic being opened. "This is Mara Holt," the voice said. Calm, even. "You're listening to WKRX, the line that never closes." Then the show began again. Music at first, old, warped tracks from the station's archives, low jazz, old folk songs, each one slightly off speed, bending around the edges like film left in the sun. Then her voice again, quieter now, threaded through the sound like smoke. "Keep the line open." Some swore it was a recording. Others said she was still out there, broadcasting from somewhere else, maybe underground. But the strange thing was this. The signal wasn't coming from any tower. No frequency matched, no traceable origin, just appearing, between songs, between stations. Like a whisper between breaths. In the diner on Route 9, the graveyard shift waitress Clara turned the dial one night to drown out the hum of the neon sign. She froze when she heard it. Mara's voice. You ever feel like someone's waiting for you to answer? The sound was warm, intimate. It felt like someone speaking just over your shoulder. Clara leaned closer to the small radio, grease popping from the grill behind her.
If you do, just keep the line open, Mara said. The diner lights flickered. Every appliance hummed in the same key as her voice. Clara reached out to turn it off, then stopped. From the kitchen phone, long dead, came a faint ring. Once, then silence. She left the diner unlocked that night. No one saw her again. Weeks later, a long-haul driver named Ellis caught the same broadcast somewhere near the state line. He'd heard about the fire, everyone had, but he liked strange things, the kind that made the night less empty. The signal came in during a dead stretch of static. Mara again. If you can hear me, you're already part of it. Her tone was almost tender, the way someone speaks to a child who's just woken from a dream. I tried to turn it off, but it keeps counting. The voice cracked, subtle, but enough to sound real. Ellis leaned in, one hand on the wheel, headlights cutting through fog. Then he heard another voice underneath hers, fainter, a woman's voice echoing the same words just a half-second later. I tried to turn it off. The delay made the words vibrate, two versions of the same sentence trying to exist at once. Ellis switched the radio off. The voices didn't stop. They moved into the cab itself, through the vibration of the dashboard, through the steering column. Keep the line open. The radio was unplugged. Keep the line open. He pulled over near the old bridge and climbed out into the rain. The fog had thickened, pale and heavy, swallowing the road. Somewhere far off, from no direction at all, came the faint ring of a telephone. Ellis started walking. He never made it home. By October, the whole valley had gone quiet at night. No one left their radios on. No one answered calls after dark. Some claimed to hear Mara's show even without power, her voice slipping through dead circuits, humming inside walls, bleeding from unplugged speakers. One woman swore her daughter spoke with her, said the voice called her name gently, like a lullaby. "Do you hear me now?" it asked. The same words carved in the melted concrete where the control room once stood. A month after the fire, an engineer from the broadcasting company drove up to the site. His name was Darnell Pike, 49, ex-military, not a man who scared easily. His job was simple: confirm that no residual signals were leaking from the tower ruins, finalize the report, and lock the property. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he did believe in frequencies. He brought equipment, oscilloscopes, EM scanners, a hand-cranked receiver. The ground still stank of carbon and rain. The tower was nothing but twisted steel. At 11:57 p.m., the receiver clicked to life. A soft hum. Then the unmistakable sound of a reel turning. Click, whir, crackle. Darnell froze. The building had no power, yet the signal came clear. This is Mara Halt. Her voice, faint but warm. If you hear this, you're already tuned in. The oscilloscope spiked. A second voice joined, Lena's. It's still counting. The pitch of the hum deepened, vibrating through his chest. The ground beneath him pulsed. Darnell dropped the receiver and ran. Behind him, through the dead air, the voices overlapped. Keep the line open. Keep the line open. Keep the line open. That night, a new legend took root in Cold Valley. They said you could hear her after midnight, always the same time. They said the broadcast wasn't a replay. It grew. Each night the show changed slightly,
as though someone were still speaking through it, adding words, finishing sentences that had never been said aloud. They said if you listened long enough, you'd hear your own name. And if you answered, if you spoke back, your voice would join hers, faint and eternal, in the spaces between frequencies. Every voice wants a listener. The town forgot sleep again. Winter came. The snow buried the ruins, soft and white, muffling the hum. But it never really stopped. The valley held it, low, steady, like a heart still beating underground. One night, a state trooper pulled over near mile marker 12 to check a wrecked car. The engine was cold, door open, driver gone. Inside, the radio still played. If you hear the call, the trooper leaned closer. Don't answer after midnight. The tape popped. Silence. Then a soft knock came from inside the trunk. By spring, WKRX had been forgotten by the company, erased from listings, its frequency reassigned. But across the state, through static, through songs, through empty channels, her voice still found its way in. Sometimes clear as glass, sometimes warped and distant, always calm, always familiar. This is Mara Halt. You're listening to the Nightline. And sometimes, if the signal was strong, you could hear another voice under it, Lena's, echoing from deep in the mix, her tone lighter, almost at peace. Keep the line open. The hum would follow, low and endless. Late one night, a teenager named Sam flipped through stations while driving home. He stopped at one, crackling, half music, half static. A woman's voice drifted through, soft and distant. If you hear the call, Sam leaned forward, smiling nervously. Don't answer after midnight. He laughed, thinking it was part of some Halloween prank. Then his phone rang. He didn't recognize the number. He looked at the clock. 12:01 a.m. The hum began again. Soft at first, then stronger, rolling out across fields and roads and empty houses. The kind of sound that feels too steady to be mechanical.
Somewhere in the static, two voices intertwined. One living, one not. Fading into the same tone until they were indistinguishable. It's still counting. Keep the line open. The frequency spread. No one could trace it. No one could stop it. It was never just a broadcast. It was a heartbeat. And it was still alive.
You've stayed with me this long. You've heard every whisper, every echo, every call. Maybe you think it's just a story, but when your phone rings tonight, when it's late, when the house is quiet, you'll remember this frequency. You'll feel the pull to answer, to listen, to believe. Don't pick up. Don't even look at the clock, because the moment you do, you'll be on the line, and something will already be listening back. This is Mara Lang, signing off for the last time. Keep your phones off, keep your lights low, and remember, never, ever answer after midnight.